So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay, another standard siege battle. And I think enough time will have passed by the time this one comes out, around 3 months or so, that we can revisit the Grey Havens, because I got sent a clutch of 3 all at once when I did the last battle here. So this one's a little bit on the older side for a replay, but I do want to go back to it and do at least 2 of the 3, just so that people know that I'm not going to ignore their replays. I do like to go back to these and do them when I can. And this is a good settlement as well. It always produces very nice battles. It's obviously a very thematic settlement as well. The difference is, last time we saw good on the defence, this time we're going to see evil on the defence. They have somehow managed to capture the Grey Havens, and now we are going to see if they can hold on to it. It's very similar to the themes that we've had lately, where it has been mostly evil on the defence, and the different dynamics that that brings with it. This time as well, it's going to be Umbar and Rhun flanking an Orcish force once again, and we shall see if Saruman's servants can do better than Sauron's at holding a fort, as it will be Isengard being the core of this defence. But without further ado, let's go into the army compositions. It will be a mix of men, elves and dwarves trying to retake the Grey Havens, the dwarven contingent being played by MSQ2, which is going to be the dwarves of Khazad-Dum, some 4th Legion Shield Guard, very good at preventing any sort of sally outs, which is very possible. We saw in the last battle Rhun and Umbar did bring some heavy hitting cavalry. They could have been used better on that occasion, but the danger still exists, and something like the 4th Legion Shield Guard can be a good countermeasure. It's that sort of thing. Plenty of units of dwarven miners. The armour piercing will be useful once again against all of the defenders. Most evil factions, to be fair, are going to have some sort of reliance on their armour, so armour piercing is always a pretty safe bet. And the dwarven miners, they may not be the best units individually, but they're cheap, they allow you to pad out your army, and they do have that AP that comes with them. So 4th Legion Shield Guard over here. At the core of the army, Balin himself is going to be marching with the armour piercing guards of Khazad-Dum, the more aggressive of the Khazad-Dum bodyguard units. Effectively, they're the equivalent to the Dragon Slayers over in Erebor, in that they are a shielded infantry unit, but they do still have that AP. Very, very dangerous to all of the defending factions here. Dwarven infantry often is. Warriors of Khazad-Dum are a little bit more run-of-the-mill by dwarven standards, but they should still be able to outperform most of the standard infantry that they go up against. Having said that, Isengard and Umbar in particular do have some mid to upper tier line infantry units that can outperform the warriors quite easily, and Rhun can obviously fall back on their AP. 3rd Legion infantry a little bit better. Once again, without the armour upgrade, the general level of quality here though should be enough to make them stand toe to toe with some of the better line infantry units that the defenders may be able to bring on this occasion. No armour upgrades is not too much of a surprise, given that they are on the attack today. You're going to have to cut corners somewhere, as we said last time with regards to Imladris. Hammers of Gondor have got locked morale, which can be really useful if you're fighting a losing battle in a situation like this, but also the huge amount of AP damage they can chuck out is also very, very useful. Some more warriors of Khazad-Dum, some more miners. A fairly big dwarven army this actually, because of the standard Khazad units and also the Legion units not having their armour upgrade, and he's not gone too heavily into the bodyguard units either, which I actually think is a good move when you're on the attack, because numbers do count. And he has also punted for a unit of Iron Watch of Miramir, which is always a bit of a problem if you're the defenders and you see this coming at you, because it means you cannot just bulk up into a corner and try and make the map narrow, because if you do that, the Iron Watch can punish you severely for doing so. So that will have to be a big target for the defenders to go after. The player who sent me this battle replay is Filler once again, actually. So this one is a substantially older battle replay than the Cirith Ungol battle that we did last time around. But still, here we are. And he is going to be on the attack this time, playing as the Numenorians. Numenorian cohort are a fantastic unit of line infantry. The defenders will have to be wary of the quality that Numenor can bring. Belagai pikes with the armour upgrade actually as well, which is pretty interesting to see. They'll make for a decent anchor. Several units of Numenorian cohort. This is a big monetary investment, but it can pay off because of the sheer quality they have. Belagai are archers without the armour upgrade. They're very useful in a skirmish fight, shielded as they are. Seafarers, always a good pick, I think, especially if you need to save a bit of money, because they can perform the role of medium axe infantry perfectly fine. But obviously the main attraction to bringing this unit is the very high damage you can do with the few volleys of javelins that they do have. He's elected to bring the Royal Legion of Armenelos over the Pharazim Swordmasters. They are a little bit cheaper, and they are quite numerous. Very useful unit, of course. A little bit more defensive, but if you want to save a bit of money, the Pharazim Swordmasters do cost as much as Lance Knights, so while they may have 3 HP, you pay for every inch of their quality. Numenorian steel bows, bit of armour piercing there as well, a trebuchet, guarded by some Belagai footmen, and of course some Adonai shadow bows as well. The rangers can be useful on the attack as well as the defence. More Belagai footmen here. Very high quality avenue of attack this, because Imladris are going to be marching alongside them. Man 2002-2, who has got some Norröna warriors. Last time we saw Imladris have to be the fall guys for the attackers. We shall see if that is the case here as well. Imladris Guardians again having to forego the armour upgrade because they are on the attack, electing to spend that little bit of extra money elsewhere. They're still a fantastic line infantry unit though, very very similar actually in terms of the quality and focus as the Numenorian cohort alongside them. Only elves tend to prioritise a little bit more melee defence in comparison to the Numenorians with their heavy plate. Standard Swords of Rivendell pushing up the ram, some Broinen River Wards for the two-handed sword goodness that the elves often bring, Norröna warriors, some Eldarenway spears. Last time we saw them be useful, even if they were getting focused down by crossbow fire. Imladris sentries, lots of polearms actually here for this Imladris army, as we can also see some Gwythi Arthand backing things up, which is the general's unit. I don't think there's anything else. There could be, yeah, there's a couple of units of Spears of Rivendell back here as well, without the armour upgrade, but they do have AP apparently, which I'm still not the biggest fan of that kind of unit though, because they are so fragile and so easy to keep at arm's length, but nonetheless. Then we have Pager, who has got Dol Amroth, Doran Ernil archers here just to do a bit of skirmishing. He's also placed his stakes down to make this a little bit more perilous for cavalry to come out and try and meet him. I would have thought Dol Amroth wouldn't have been the first port of call for a sally out anyway, because they're more likely to bring cavalry. The Perithil riders may not have been what they were expecting, but still gives you a lot of manoeuvrability, and they're still decent archers on horseback, but horse archers on the attack can be quite difficult to use effectively. Athalon men-at-arms with the armour upgrade, they will be decent. The Black Swan Renegades will be even better because of that armor-piercing edge they have, even if they are quite expensive. Athalon Halberdiers and Belfast Marines even more AP, with some Tirithea Marksmen in for good measure. Tarnostian Spears, Perithil Champions, and way over in the back Haven Guard. So a pretty high quality Dol Amroth army this, but a little bit smaller as a result. And then Dol Amroth's, I was going to say leash holders, but that seems a little bit more aggressive than what it is. They're overlords. That's still fairly aggressive. But yes, Via Caro is playing as Gondor. Gondor archers, similar story here really as with the Doran Ernil archers when neither of them have got their armour upgrades. So yeah, they're just going to be skirmishing with the enemy. Some civilians, some Gondor militia archers, so plenty of basic archers, plenty of Gondor infantry by the looks of things as well. Lots of rank and file here for Gondor, as well as some Ravenhelms, some Nimlothian Honour Guard, some Axemen of Lasarnak actually without the armour upgrade. That's the second time we've seen them more recently. Very often you see them get bulked up a little bit because they can be a little bit fragile without the armour upgrades, but there they are, and the Mithrandir's retinue. So now we shall move on to the defenders, the two factions of evil men from far away. I can only assume the way they took the Grey Havens was via Umbar's naval expertise, played by Son of the Dunedain here. Castamir's Rangers and Corsair Crossmen setting up into a pretty nasty position. Gondor will, I'm sure, not enjoy their presence up there. Ardenheim Shield Guard, Belagire Pikemen, there's some Balakith Axe Guard in there as well. Lots of good combined arms. Umbar, when they have the money to spend, can have a very fine infantry force indeed. Same thing over on that side. Alcarondas Legion, not surprising to see them, the core of any good Umbar infantry force. Balakith Marksmen with the upgrade as well. There is a bit of cavalry over here, some Alcarondas Faithful, more defensive cavalry perhaps, but the Mithrandir's retinue will really want to avoid them. Balakith Marksmen, more Alcarondas Legion, more crossbows, loads of crossbows actually. So Son of the Dunedain here clearly going to be relying more on his ranged units than his melee force, which is a bold move for Umbar, because Umbar could be more tempted to go more all in for their infantry. We'll see if that pays off. Gondor can definitely mitigate range damage better than most. Rastalin, who is playing as Isengard, has got some Trolls of the White Hand. Obviously we're going to see a lot of Uruk-hai infantry, Uruk-hai pikemen being the centre of things, some Uruk-hai berserkers over here as well, which Dol Amroth will really not like fighting in melee. That armour piercing will be really nasty for them. Uruk-hai crossbowmen, a couple of units of them, some Bane Guard. Isengard don't hurt for AP after all. And then over here we're going to see more of Isengard, some more crossbows. The Lurtz hunting pack will do a lot of damage. We can see there's some Eastrom crossbows by Lord Touch Me on the back there. Nazkai, Guards of Orthanc, pikes, more infantry, very uniform type Isengard army as you would expect. Kamul's Shadow Bows and Shadow Guard are here. Plenty of the Golden Legion as well. Eastron Guard actually with the armour upgrade is interesting to see them. They look very nice. Effectiveness, more questionable, but we'll see. Flagrim, Gamprim, Sirenrim. I like the fact that Rhun have been tasked with marshalling the dwarves because they can definitely get the most out of their huge AP core against them. Dragon's Wrath crossbows, Balkoth Sapphire Bladesmen, Eastron crossbows, and then plenty more units of Flagrim and Gamprim down over here. Now I will be making a little bit of a cut because there is going to be a period where they're going to be sort of moving around. There may be a little bit of inconsequential skirmishing going on right at the start, but that's not really going to be all that important. I'll rejoin when the attacks on the walls are actually beginning. So the cavalry is about to sally out and attack the civilians, and in fact they're going to do so by phasing through the gate. That's rather unexpected. Foul sorcery from Umbar. But yeah, these civilians are obviously not going to do too great when they're being ridden down by some of these very heavily armed Umbar mounted knights. Even so, wasn't quite the sweeping manoeuvre I was expecting, but then I was also expecting the gate to actually open, but perhaps it can't when the ram is actually mounted on there like that. But the attacks on the walls are starting to begin now, so it wasn't actually as big of a cut as I was expecting to make. Several units of miners. The miners will struggle just because the kind of units they're going up against, the Flagrim are just a higher tier of unit. Dwarven miners not really warriors, whereas the Flagrim, some of the finer fighters that the men of the East have at their disposal. Imladris going to be hanging back. I mean, this is a very high quality duo. It is also worth saying Khazad-Dum are having to split between two gates, whereas Imladris and Numenor may very well be focusing on one. This is the sort of thing you need to pay attention to if you're the defender, because it means you have to really focus on this point of your defence as being the main area, because Numenor and Imladris are two very dangerous factions just in terms of what they bring to the table, and it does look as though that's what they're going to be doing. There goes one of the defending gates, but they've got the Isengard ballista over here, which I actually somehow managed to miss. Also the rangers, crossbows, plenty of units over here that can marshal Imladris and Numenor's presence. Whereas Rhun, while they too have to split their efforts, they can rely on their quality being the defenders a little bit more so. This is a little bit odd, the fact that the Iron Watch and Mirrormere are up here on this tower already, and they are going to start firing by the looks of things. Oof. Yeah, that was... I was wondering if that was going to happen, but that is a disaster for Khazad-Dum, and I'm sure that MSQ2 will never make that mistake again. The Iron Watch of Mirrormere do technically count as a siege unit, I suppose, being that they are mortars, and as you can see they do damage to siege towers, and they fire right up in the air and over, and because the roof of the siege tower is over them, the damage transferred to the siege tower and they killed themselves. That is a huge win for the defenders, because the Iron Watch can be such a dangerous unit to have to try and deal with. And he will be absolutely mortified at that, I'm sure, MSQ2, but it's one of those things that you don't know until you see it actually happen, because I was not convinced that would happen. Because some projectiles can sort of phase through stuff like that, like standard arrows will not do any damage to arrow towers like that unless they're aflame. So it was a little interesting thing there to... well, now we know. Confirmed. Myth busted. Or myth confirmed. The Iron Watch as a siege light unit do in fact do damage to siege towers. That's a remarkable thing. But the dwarves have lost one of their most key tools there. Umbar still marshalling Gondor's presence, but not an awful lot happening there as it stands. Over here, Dol Amroth slowly creeping towards the Isengard lines, but Isengard won't be too concerned with the kind of units that are coming over here. Tarnostian spears and Athalor men-at-arms. Neither of those units are of the level that would be required to really start doing some damage. Meanwhile, Imladris coming forward, perhaps seeing that those Iron Watch... in the game chat, I'm sure MSQ2 expressed his displeasure at that sort of thing. You can see there the Seafarers of Nindamos trying to get some javelin volleys off, but the Guards of Orthanc, an elite unit of spears coming forward to charge into and just let the Seafarers know that they're not just going to let them get away with that at their leisure. There, the Imladris Guardians moving up the ladder as well. This wall is completely unoccupied at the moment, so the Numenorian cohort are going to get up here. They will not have to take the damage that being surrounded immediately right off the bat brings with it. Although maybe they will. The Uruk-hai infantry might be able to get into place. Of course, the ladders on the Grey Havens, because they are lower, some units do get lost as a result, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's just one of the quirks of the map, the Elven walls. As I have learnt in the Erebor campaign when taking captured Elven settlements. So the Uruk-hai infantry will actually probably be alright here. The Numenorian cohort will take so many losses doing this. But the Uruk-hai infantry will remain there, but you can see their javelin volleys do end up landing on the Guards of War. Thank Rastlin has got a lot more to worry about now. Imladris Guardians also falling down there. Alcarondas faithful leaving the Gondorian front line. There's a few dead civilians, but little else of note over there, if we're being honest. The dwarves definitely taking a step back after the tragic loss of the Iron Watch, and Rhun will simply wait and bide their time. Meanwhile, this wall is taking damage. The Numenorian trebuchet trying to bust a hole in the wall, and for good measure they can cut this unit of Uruk-hai infantry in half. They should consider knocking some holes in the wall anyway, I think. It'll give them a little bit more room to manoeuvre. They are the attackers. They can be a little bit more agile than the defenders in this kind of situation. Even if the openings are relatively close, it does tend to be something that is always positive for the attackers. Crumbling walls with your artillery means your artillery ammunition is never going to be wasted, I'll put it that way. You can always get some good value off there. The Carmel's Dragon Knights are here, a much more aggressive unit of cavalry, and they are going to start charging in here. They'll do a lot of damage off the charge to seafarers. They do need to be a bit careful though, there are Belagar footmen in here. You don't want to be losing such a high ticket unit to spears, as we saw in the last battle replay on Cirith Ungol as well. And there are some Uruk-hai pikemen. Might be time to try and close the jaws on this unit. On these units, I should say. Carmel's Shadowbow is also ripping through that section there. Another section of the walls goes down. The Imladris Guardians fighting hard. Balance of forces evenly matched. I mean, they are outnumbered by the Uruk-hai infantry, but this really is going to be the game changer. Taking unobstructed and direct crossbow fire is going to mean that the Imladris Guardians do lose this fight. Even though they were outnumbered, they were fighting evenly with the Uruk-hai infantry there, which is no mean feat. Uruk-hai infantry are a very fine unit, but with crossbow support, that's where Isengard really do shine. Their solid front line combined with those armour-piercing missiles, the Uruk-hai pikes getting into position here, and those seafarers probably did use up their ammunition, to be fair, on the Guards of War. I think most of those guards are bloodied up now. What is going on here? The dwarves are starting to drop in as well. Again, several of them falling to their doom, but again, warriors of Khazad-Dum, that armour piercing should be enough, especially considering they're effectively surrounding the unit. Should be enough for the Flag Room to win this fight. It will be close though, which is a sign, I think, of the dwarven quality. The 3rd Legion will win that fight. There's some other units from Rhun, which can easily come in and support. Over here though, still less eager to attack through here, but that's not too surprising. It's mostly miners he has over here with 1 unit of 4th Legion. They need to just bide their time on this gate and only attack when the time is right. There's Sapphire Bladesmen and all sorts in. If you can convince Rhun to use those Sapphire Bladesmen on stuff like Dwarven Miners, it might be worth attacking actually. Meanwhile, a ton of damage has been done over here, I would assume by skirmishers. It can't only be by the cavalry, surely. Crossbow bolts from on high, I would assume, is the cause of Gondor's woes, but Gondor haven't really made any moves to get into the settlement so far, and they're still hemorrhaging manpower. But then their task was always quite difficult, but I feel as though Gondor, they were destined to be the fall guys in this battle, and by not accepting that mantle, Numenor and Imladris may end up biting the bullet for them instead. And if you were the attackers, which factions would you rather have on your side in the late game? Uruk-hai infantry still waiting, Dol Amroth still biding their time. I mean, really, it's only this part of the battlefield here which is really a blood and guts kind of engagement at this point. And it is, what I said at the start, probably the most important one for the attackers because of the quality these two factions bring to the table. Swords of Rivendell getting in here, engaging with the already seasoned Uruk-hai infantry. The problem is, if these are the only guys attacking in numbers, it gives the defenders, even if they weren't going to do this initially, they will now focus on this attack, which is bad for the attackers in the long run, I think. But we'll see. For the defenders, as long as they're attacking, as long as they're doing damage to the defenders in a meaningful way and not getting absolutely slaughtered, then they should be in a good position. And also, a lot of ranged ammunition is being dumped quite early here. You have to pace yourself as the defenders. If you use too much of your ammunition too early, it allows the attackers to bully you in the late game. And we could see examples of that happening here, with already Umbar attacking Gondor from on high, and plenty of ranger ammunition being used on the first waves, really, of the Numenorian and Noldor advance into what is their city, effectively, with Lindum presumably wiped from the face of the earth, Hathel Baneguard moving in. There's no real need for range support at this point. Once again, the trebuchet, they are going to try and break this wall down. They will do a lot of damage to that unit of Uruk-hai infantry. They are going to get away just in time, I think. Most of them are, anyway. Did they knock a hole in this wall over here? Oof, that frame rate when the walls start to fall. They did. And plenty of Uruk-hai infantry fell with it. So yeah, good use of the trebuchet here by Filler. Dol Amroth might want to start thinking about moving in, though. With no rangers close by, you're going to take crossbow fire, sure. But I think it is worth your time to try and be a little bit aggressive here against Isengard, because the worst that could happen is Umbar could come across to support them, but that gives the opening that Gondor may need. Someone else other than Numenor and Imladris need to be a little bit bolder here. The dwarves have kind of done that, but they have the difficult task of having to take 2 walls. I would have argued that the dwarves may have been better off focusing on just the one. Oof, what's going on here? And you can see here actually the dwarves punching through very aggressively now from MSQ2. Most of his higher quality units that he's got now punching right through this defence. The Gamp are here, but the sheer amount of dwarven infantry that's here. I really like this from the dwarves because this will force the defender's hand. The classic frame drops as tons of units come in. I don't know why that's happening lately. Maybe it really is my PC coming to the end of its working life as a recording PC. It's entirely possible. I don't know what MSQ2 is... I mean, I don't think he should be overtly aggressive and try and take the town centre, because then he will end up losing. I hope he's not throwing his toys out of the pram because he lost his Iron Watch early. I mean, to an extent this is a good idea, but we'll learn if he is just throwing the game pretty quickly, if he just force paths his units all the way to the town centre and ends up losing so much of his force. And Rhun should be able to recover from this situation. I mean, the Dwarven miners are just really holding these units of Flagrim in place on the walls for a little bit longer so the main infantry column can continue its forward march. The rest of the Dwarven army over here as well is still... There is still a Dwarven presence over here, but Rhun... I mean, if I were Rhun, this would have caught me off balance a little bit. But I also wouldn't have minded too much, because they're going to... He should have just stopped marching forward as soon as he pushed through the gate here. Like, capturing the town centre and getting a victory that way, I've very rarely seen it, and all the time I've been doing replays, and there's a reason for that. It's because by the time the town centre often gets captured and the attackers can actually hold it, the defenders are going to lose the battle conventionally anyway. I'm not convinced this is a great idea. It was a good idea initially, because it clearly caught Rhun off balance. But I think maybe he got a little bit too far ahead of himself there. Over here, meanwhile, Numenor and Imladris continue to get held at arm's length by a very bullish Isengard defence, with Nazkai now on the front line. More projectiles coming in, hitting friend and foe alike. And it is worth saying as well that Numenor and Imladris do still have more reinforcements to commit, and they're doing quite well on the front line now. Losses are being accrued, a large part in fact due to the fact that there are those rangers up on the hill. But even still, more Imladris units getting onto this wall. Spears of Rivendell falling like rain. And then over here, Gondor is starting to move forward now as well. I mean, with the dwarves doing what they're doing, other units are going to have to go back and reclaim the town centre, because the dwarves will get to the TC ultimately. I really doubt they'll be able to hold on to it, but Umbar, I think, are going to have to be the ones to turn around and reclaim the town centre. That will then be the opportunity for Gondor and Dol Amroth to start really piling the pressure on as well. I'm going to give MSQ2 the benefit of the doubt and assume that he's not just angry that he lost his Iron Watch, and that it is a genuine ploy to try and claim the TC and hold it with quality dwarven units. I don't think it will be successful. In fact, I know it won't be successful based on the fact that there's still tons and tons of frames left in this battle. Far more than 3.5 minutes would run for. However, it really will be a litmus test of how aggressive his allies are willing to be. And I'm not talking so much about Numenor and Imladris, because they've really got the ball rolling here. More so, Gondor and Dol Amroth. The time has come for them to start moving in, and it does look as though Dol Amroth have done so. Although, again, they're being a bit non-committal here. Dol Amroth trying to play the slow game, use up all their skirmishers, throw them in. You're not going to gain a great deal by doing this, though. Dor and Ernal archers are not going to have the kind of impact against Uruk-hai infantry and Uruk-hai pikemen that you really want them to have. You need to send forward a more robust fighting force than that, and Dol Amroth have got enough quality in their infantry today. They've got their heavy swordsmen, they've got their macemen, they've got the units that Isengard will not enjoy fighting. Javelin support as well. This would be so much better if there was a lot of infantry pressure also being applied. Meanwhile, the dwarves occupying the TC as they get into place. Damage being done. Cummel's chosen. I have to say, I don't think, considering the fact that the dwarves managed to get that far, I don't think Rhun responded to that push all that well. It was very, very slow and plodding. It was very obvious what Khazad-Dum were looking to do in that situation, and they kind of just rolled over and accepted it. They should be able to recover the situation, to be fair, but even so, a bit slow and lethargic there. What have we got over on this side? I would assume, yeah, Alcarondas faithful. The cavalry does need to get in there. I mean, they are running out of time. It's a bit of a shame, really, that we can see the frames in the top corner, so that you know it's not really going to work out for them. It may be as well that the players involved are going to tell MSQ2 to vacate the town centre, and they don't want the battle to end that way. It does seem a little bit gamey to take the town centre like that, so thematically I could understand the reasoning behind that. It's a tough situation, isn't it? I don't really know what to make of it. Charge coming in there, Hammers of Gundabad, 3rd Legion Infantry going flying. The Carmel's Dragon Knights are just bumping into the Hammers of Gundabad more than anything. Across come the guards of Khazad-Dum. Hammers of Gundabad are over there. 1 minute to go. Over here, the Elder Enway are now being committed to the front line, and this is the sort of thing, like the dwarves, ultimately we know to a certain extent that they are going to fail in their endeavour. But this is the golden opportunity for everyone else on the field to start making something happen. Gondor is making better strides. I mean, they're sending infantry in at the very least, but even so, it's a bit too slow for my liking from both Caro and from Pedro. Both of them being a little bit, I'm not going to call it cowardly, but it's getting in that direction. Like you're being too much of a miser, I suppose, with your resources. A bit stingy. That would be the best way to put it. Stabilising. And again, the quality of those units means they charge into the unit of 3rd Legion that was there, so they didn't tell MSQ2 to vacate the town centre. They are going to try and do things in the proper way. I like that unit model there. Maybe the axe is a little bit too big. Looks like a foam axe, but I like the armour. Like a Legion bodyguard, but with Dragon Slayer bits. You know, those Dragon Knights have been wasted as well, so again we've seen the Carmel's Dragon Knights used in not too effective a fashion. In come the guards of Khazad-Dum. There are the Dragon's Wrath crossbows who are going to be able to fire right through the heart of this dwarven blob. And with Hammers of Gundabad and guards of Khazad-Dum on offer, they really should fill their boots in terms of kills there. 3rd Legion are back in place. Alcarondas faithful getting chased off by the Hammers of Gundabad. Still, with the timer reset, they have plenty of time to bash their way through the dwarven remnant. Uruk-hai crossbows being added to melee now, just trying to hold back the Elven advance, but I mean, it says victory is a distinct possibility. That must be because of some sort of range support they're getting. Because Elder Enway will slowly but surely prod their way through this kind of... The Berserkers, it's a little bit more of a grey area because of the amount of damage they can chuck out. Once their hit points are gone, though, you would still back the Elves. Noratina Warriors are good, not a bad choice actually, because they're better in melee than the other lighter Imladris archer. That could come into play later in the battle. Numenor and Imladris have been the most conventionally effective of the attackers. I'm really not sure what to make of what the dwarves have done in this battle. The Iron Watch getting killed as they did. Trolls of the White Hand coming over here, who will not do that great against something like Hammers of Gundabad, but Isengard with a slightly quicker unit to cover ground to try and get across here. And that is going to be the Dwarven General. Balin falls. Bit of bizarre showing from Khazad-Dum to be sure, but it adds spice to the battle, which does make it less of a conventional affair. Technically the first phase of the battle is not yet over, and yet we're seeing a struggle for the town centre take place. There really isn't much left of the dwarves over here at this point though, with Sapphire Bladesmen and Dragon's Wrath crossbows, Camels chosen, numbers are over here as well, bringing the dwarves down low. And at this point they must know. The dwarves, it was an interesting effort. And ultimately I think the players who have probably failed the most in this would have to be, I've said it before, but I would have to say Gondor and Dol Amroth have really not made the most of that. Gondor, you know, Umbar haven't taken much off the front line, but you have to, when you see something like that happen, split the defenders' attentions. If you can make it really difficult to cover every angle, you're doing your job correctly as the attackers. Gondor is moving forward now, but it's not with enough oomph, and it's with a small enough force that they can be focused down and possibly routed. Dol Amroth have been even more guilty of this though, because they have really put on a very token effort to try and get through a very, very meagre front line this from Isengard and Umbar. This is ripe for the taking, and Dol Amroth have not been cutthroat enough. They haven't been decisive enough, and that may prove to be a real problem as this fight goes on. Meanwhile here we can see the Isengard Ballista doing what it does best and laying to waste more densely packed elements of units. The shields and armour though will mean they stand up quite well to something like the Lurtz hunting pack, and a missed shot as well. That's not great. Isengard may be a little bit stretched, having put in a lot for their defence against two very high quality factions. You'd have to say as well that Imladris have got more left than Numenor did, but Numenor getting in there now. Royal Legion of Armenelos will be too much for Baneguard to handle. Let's have a little look back here, shall we? Yes, and the brave 3rd Legion brought down. The Trolls, however, are depleted, and there is still the small matter of a single unit of Hammers of Gundabad. This is where their locked morale will come into play. They will continue to do good damage to the Easterlings which have occupied the TC. All the while holding them in place so they cannot then go to another part of the field once again. Still some Dwarven units back here, miners, 70 of them, but they will surely rout pretty quickly. They got in and amongst some crossbows, so a bit of damage, but ultimately MSQ2 being the full guy for his team. Let's see if his sacrifice will be in vain or not. He still has a presence on the field as well. He still has a few Dwarven units over here. A couple of units of 4th Legion Shield Guard. I mean, that's not nothing. Especially if Imladris and Numenor can continue their forward momentum, he can add those 2 units of spears to their assault and replenish them for another push. It's more valuable quality. Yeah, and this is a little bit of a problem for Rastlin as well. These units did still have ammunition, the Ballista and the Lurtz hunting pack, and they have been engaged in melee now by Imladris. So that's a real problem for Isengard. There's one Gondor infantryman there. So someone, to an extent, I suppose, has taken advantage of the sacrifice of the dwarves. Perithil riders are now in and amongst the settlement. We'll see how Pejo's micro is. His infantry have still yet to fully commit though, which again is a real shame, because this Isengard force will not be substantial enough to stop a full-blooded Dol Amrothian assault. The Uruk-hai pikeman victory seems certain. Uruk-hai infantry there. Will Gondor commit more? Umbar have been maybe a little bit one-dimensional in this fight as well, electing to focus entirely on Gondor, which has left Gondor's assault thoroughly under control, really. But also, I think he's quite fortunate that Dol Amroth haven't been more aggressive, because if they had been, Umbar would have been made to pay for focusing just on one single attacker. Isengard have been really splitting their attention a little bit better, perhaps, than the Umbarim have. But it remains unpunished, so can't complain too much. Perithil riders being zoned out by the Alcarondas faithful. They will slip away, only losing a single rider. But also horse archers like that can easily be kept at arm's length by good foot archers, and the Numenor Royal Guard are certainly a very good foot archer unit. The Perithill riders, micro lost on the Alcarondas Faithful, do catch up, and their decent armour values for a horse archer will not save them against a unit as effective against cavalry as the Alcarondas Faithful. Isengard Ballista do actually manage to get away, and they're going to try and hide, I suppose, in the lower section of the harbour. Wouldn't be a bad target for Pedro to try and completely root out and destroy. But they're going to try and hide themselves and presumably get the ballista when the attacking armies have gone past, and are then trying to attack the TC once more with a little more gusto this time. I suppose gusto wasn't the problem with the Dwarven Assault. A little bit more finesse? Perhaps that's right. Scion Ring, trying to hold back the assault with the Royal Legion of Armenelos. Higher quality, the Scion Ring really good defensively. Offensively, it's a little bit more in question. I have to say, I think Numenor and Imladris have played this rather well. And now the Dwarves do come in, trying to give the Imladris and Numenor players a hand. So Khazad-Dum still being a valuable member of his team. Those 4th Legion with a little bit of range support will be dealing with those Eastern Guard. They look very cool, but they're a bit all show and no bite. Another unit of 4th Legion over there, struggling a little bit more, but the Scion Rim were in better condition than they were, spear to spear. But still, the Dwarves facilitating further advance of Numenor and Imladris. You would have to wonder about whether the manpower of Numenor and Imladris will hold, having taken a little bit of a beating in getting through their gate. But that surely is where Dol Amroth will have to come into play. Surely. There are the Uruk-hai pikes, again still holding on to this front line. It's far outlived its welcome, this Isengard line. I mean, Dol Amroth still being misers, still only committing their basic units when 1 unit of quality would have been better than nothing. A single unit of Black Swan Renegades would have been enough alongside the other units that were here to really worry the Isengard line, but this is the sort of thing that does concern me. I mean, if the attackers go on to win this battle, Dol Amroth should absolutely not take that they did the right thing in the early game here, because I can tell you for a fact that they did not. And also have Blackguards fighting with the militia and the standard soldiery of Gondor. Classic matchup between the exiled and the current holders of the southern kingdom of Numenor. Not many Balakathak's Guard left. I mean, Umbar's lines are holding. Gondor making somewhat of a different mistake here to Dol Amroth in that they were committing their units in batches that were simultaneously too small and too large. Too small to push through the Umbar lines and actually achieve victory, but too large to the point where if you were hoping to just test and slowly wear Umbar down and absorb skirmish ammunition efficiently, you're not going to achieve that either. The dreaded in-between. Dwarven units moving forward, completely surrounding now the Scion Rim. We may start to see the defenders pull back. It would certainly be my thought at this point. There may still be a couple of volleys in the Treb, although the fact that they've left them behind would suggest not. And without the Iron Watch, your best bet would be, I think, to bulk up in the town centre and hold those bridges. That would be how I would try and salvage this battle if I were trying to defend. Because at this stage, you would have to say, it really is a case of search and destroy for the attackers. What are they fighting in here? Whatever they were fighting, it was dominated. Now Dol Amroth moving forward, getting some genuine quality into the settlement now. Better late than never, I suppose, but he will need to, as a result of this, he will need to pick up the slack in the late game, just because he still has most of his army left. He's definitely the attacking army that still has the most available to him in terms of reserves. The Dwarven miners that are routing, they've been routing a long way. Uruk-hai pikemen, Rastlin's forces being laid low. Yeah, and Umbar are starting to pull some of their units off the front line now. They're just going to leave a rear guard here. A single unit of Alcarondas Legion will do decently against more basic units of Gondor, but there are some wardens in the White Tower you can see moving in as well, who will be able to defeat the Alcarondas Legion in a straight up fight. What have we got here? Yeah, complete victory here in the south end of the settlement. It's just a case of helping the slowpokes in the north and get over the small speed bumps that they have left for them. Yeah, the Uruk-hai pikemen do end up getting dominated. I think there is probably going to be a cut in the middle of this battle. The only thing that is really left in terms of a fight is Umbar's rear guard against Gondor, which is going quite well. I would expect Umbar to be doing quite well though. Like I said, they have been focusing largely on Gondor overall, so you would expect this kind of performance. Some Gondor archers. What do Gondor actually have left? I mean, having a look around, this is actually a little bit more worrying than I thought it was initially going to be. Those wards of the White Tower need to be in there. Again, an example of maybe being a little bit stingy, hoping perhaps that his allies will come in and bail him out. May not be the most foolproof plan. Let's have blackguards on their way down. I mean, I would try and save every man that you can for the TC. If you can really bulk up in that town centre, the manpower that the attackers have left may not be enough to overcome yours with how much damage Imladris, Khazad-Dum and Numenor have all taken. Of course, their blackguard's decent enough in melee to warrant keeping them. Victory seems certain. Yeah, this militia is not enough. We've seen quite a few examples of inexperience today, I would suggest. What have we got here? Noratino warriors getting into position, as well as some Rhun and river wards. There is still a single Dragon Knight of Karmul, making a nuisance of himself, bloodied up as he is, getting in there to try and deal with the Noratino warriors. So we are still, maybe we won't see a cut here. Umbar maybe with a little bit of indecision. And now they are going to fire into the backs of the retreating Umbar force. Belagai pikemen, a good unit to target down. Plenty of good kills on offer. Trolls the White Hand here. The Rhun and river wards will be able to stop them though. Exactly the kind of unit that can deal with injured trolls. What have we got here? Not a whole lot. Southern side of the settlement already, as a result of what the dwarves did, I think the defenders do know that they need to pull back over here and just allow the attackers their space. In the north of the settlement, Umbar may be a little bit less cognizant of that fact. And they may be getting punished as a result here. This unit, of course, our blackguards needlessly getting intercepted and destroyed. And to give Dol Amroth their dues, they have come across here and they are now assisting with the efforts of the Gondorians to get through this area. Although Gondor have taken a real beating, you have to question how much they will have left to give. And like I said, in the late game here, the numbers that Dol Amroth still have available to them will be absolutely vital in the attackers going on to win this fight. Black Swan Renegades with their armour piercing, helping out the militia to overwhelm and destroy the Alcarondas Legion there. Gondor moving forward with what they have left. Dol Amroth pushing through the settlements as well. What have we got going on over here? A whole lot of nothing, that's what. Routing units galore. With Randir's retinue moving forwards. The trolls actually do manage to get into the Noratino warriors in the end, which is a little bit of a lapse in concentration by Imladris. They sent their Rhun and river wards after a more complete unit of blackguards, and good opportunity here for Umbar. And what's left of the Isengard trolls to actually do a little bit of damage. You could still back the Rhun and river wards to pack a real sting in melee though. And also that one Dragon Knight, this poor unit of Noratino warriors really being bullied by trolls and that one cavalryman. Significant problems abound. That unit of blackguards meanwhile slowly being worn down by the Athalond men-at-arms. In come the Wardens of the White Tower, albeit their presence here is probably a little bit superfluous. The Renegades with the added backing of the militia would be enough to finish off this flagging unit of Alcarondas Legion. Still some individual units as well, but nothing too significant. What have we here? Did well actually in that fight, the Corsair Blackguards. I mean, yes, they did outnumber the Rhun and River Wards, but still, it does go to show that they do have something to give in melee, because not just anything can enter combat with the Rhun and River Wards and expect to do decently. More heavy swordsmen though, the Perithal champions and the Black Swan Renegades are on the way across. They will help bring down these foul pirates, I'm sure. Meanwhile, smell Grondas Faithful from Umbar, hovering with intent, making sure that small individual units can't come forward without getting a bloodied nose for their troubles. Maybe not the 4th Legion Shield Guard. Whatever happened to those, to the artillery crew? I assume they must have been found, or they retreated to the town centre, because their corpses are not down here. Those are the bodies of Umbar units, Mithrandir's retinue. No, there they are. They are running free, although the cavalry really should be able to catch up to them. And that, you would assume, would be that. I don't know if they would be able to remount the ballista with its position anyway. If the attackers were to attack both bridges, it's really a case of do or die at that stage. No Warriors there in the end. They're going to have to go through other units. There's no way they make it back. There's too far to go. Either infantry or cavalry will get them. And it will be the cavalry. They choose a quick death at the hands of thundering hooves. And what have we here? Still eager, the Blackguards. Good example of Umbar's high morale. Alcarondas Faithful moving around. Still perpetually routing units running around in a circle here. Excuse me. They did remount the trebuchet, that crew, so maybe it does still have a little bit of ammunition left. If so, it would be a really good tag for Son of the Dunedain if he could see them off. Only 3 Alcarondas Faithful though. I mean, they're tanky, but do they have enough damage dealing potential to get that trebuchet crew burnt down before all is said and done? Yeah, and there go the Blackguards, completely overwhelmed. And I suppose at this stage it really is a case of, can the Faithful finish the trebuchet crew off? There's 4th Legion Shield Guard on the way. I mean, you may as well try and keep following the trebuchet crew. I don't know how useful this unit of 3 is really going to be. But I think with that, I mean, giving the run around, excluding the run around with these 3 units of cavalry, now would be a good time, I think, to make a cut as the attackers make up their mind about who is going to attack the town centre from what direction. So I'll make a cut and we'll rejoin when the palace of the Grey Havens is under attack. So a little bit of a sally forth here from Rhun as they're going to try and bring down the trebuchet with their infantry. The trebuchet crew does manage to wriggle away though, so this will be where we rejoin proceedings. The Athalon men-at-arms and the Royal Legion of Armenelos blocking this little runic force, which included the Sapphire Bladesmen, so they were serious about cutting their way to the trebuchet crew. One thing that I would be slightly worried about though is the sheer density of defending units that there are still here. There's still quite a lot of units back here, including some pretty tanky Umbar spears. They have backed themselves into a corner though. There's only so much you can say about skirmish fights such as the one that's going on over here between the Gondor archers and the Balaketh marksmen. Balaketh marksman, the superior skirmishing archer of the two, better armour with the upgrade especially, but also the fact they do have a shield value. Gondor archers trying their best, but we've seen this quite a lot already from the likes of Gondor and Dol Amroth in this fight. They've been really eager to try and use archers and the like. It's been slow, and it hasn't been too effective, you would have to say, at this stage in the battle. And I don't know, personally I think the defenders have got enough that they can bulk up and take whatever the attackers can throw at them at this point. And this is a potential danger of bringing so many quality-focused factions on the attack, but it's also the danger of not everyone being as aggressive as they should be. Now, the attackers could still very easily go on to win this battle. They could just have too much for the defenders. But in order to do that, they will need to try and crush them underfoot with brute force, I think. Noratino warriors moving forward, out of ammunition. Decent in melee, though, like I said. So they're going to move forward through the festering meat clouds that lay left with the trebuchet. There was a little bit of a skirmish before I rejoined the action here in the late game, but not enough that it was worth rejoining the action for. There's only so much you can say about people poking one another ineffectually with archers and with rotting meat projectiles from an artillery piece. Alcarondas Legion moving forward, and they will make a complete mockery of Gondor militia units. There's not that much here in the north, you would have to say, at least not on first glance. What do the attackers actually have over here? Some Imladris units, maybe not enough though. Perithil champions are decent. What's that over there? Boards of the White Tower as well. So most of the oomph is going to come from the south bridge. There are some Black Swan renegades in there as well, which is good because this does mean that the attackers will be in the ascendancy in this fight. They need that AP. Obviously the militia alone was never going to be enough to deal with something as good as the Alcarondas Legion. Back over here we have more units on the way forward as well. Balakith marksmen that are out of ammo. I mean, they can double as half decent line infantry in melee. They're not world beaters in that sense by any means, but they're good enough to be fit for purpose. Moritano warriors will move forward. Again, numbers wise, the Balakith marksmen will be able to defeat the elven combatants here, and we may be seeing again another example of the attackers not being brave enough, not being on the front foot enough. Once again we're seeing Dol Amroth, time and time again I've said it in this fight, but they are way back here doing, let's be honest, not much. Imladris also, I mean, I don't know what they're waiting for at this point. The defenders are there across the bridges. They're not going to move for you. You are the attackers, the onus is on you to have to move into their defences. And this may also be where the Dwarven push through the lines, and ultimately what you'd have to say, they're not going to be getting very efficient kills in that sort of manoeuvre. This may be where that action by MSQ2 does come back to bite its team in the rear. I appreciate that it happened, because it was an interesting thing, but I don't think the attacking team has really made the most of what that really represented. Gondor archers taking some hits from across the way. Horns of the White Tower also joining in. Certainly, in terms of the calibre of reinforcements, a little bit more meaty than the Balakith marksmen that were added for the defenders. A little further back. Still Uruk-hai crossbows with a bit of ammunition as well, which will be worrying. Umbar also investing quite heavily into their, admittedly more lightly armoured, but still just as deadly crossbows. So all the armour-piercing projectiles, seemingly, have been a very big boon for the defenders so far. And with more of them left to use. And of course armour-piercing in melee as well, which here in the late game will be so useful because all of the units that they're going to be reliant on here are going to be more heavy-hitting armoured units from an attacking perspective. So stuff like the Flag Rim, even if they don't outright win, will still be able to leave more of a mark than other higher-end line infantry units will do. Doranono archers with a bit of ammunition. Ardenheim shadow bows are an interesting inclusion. It kind of depends on whether or not they can hit this blob over here, which they can actually. So cowering back here in the town centre, they will have to scatter themselves a little bit more. I know I shouldn't have dusted earlier, I can feel it in the back of my throat. So good shots there from Filler. I mean, that is the sort of thing which can turn a battle. Dead trolls. Gondor are going to try and use their Mithrandir's retinue to smash through this, admittedly a bit thin on the ground defence. I'm not sure the defenders have even approached this battle on the bridges in the fashion that I would have. Defeat seems certain, only a military genius could win this battle. Gondor militia archers still trading blows with the Uruk-hai crossbowmen. Crossbows are returning fire as well. I mean, it's not the most important unit, so could be considered a bit of a victory for the attackers at this stage, but are any kills good enough for the defenders at this point? Just a constant stream of damage into the attackers, will that be enough to secure them victory? Clearly seeing the danger that those rangers represented, pushing forward and actually getting to the trebuchet crew and the Dorananal archers in melee at the very least. These look flagrant. But the Rangers did vacate. More Black Swan Renegades pushing forward now. Nara and Aru Royal Guard are also going to be skirmishing. This is much more their wheelhouse than crossbows. And they will easily have the beating of Gondor archers in a fight like this between two archers. Eldarenway Spearmen, albeit very, very depleted, but a bit of a footnote of a battle, this one. As we do march into the final 10k frames, near enough. What are we looking at here? Yeah, I mean, the attackers have lost more of the proportion of their army, but you do look through their ranks and you do see quite a lot of quality still remains. Royal Legion, there's still the Haven Guard lurking around here somewhere. There they are. Tarnostian Spears maybe a little bit less so. There's still an Imladris force over here, including the Bright the Arthan. Pikes in the late game can be an insurmountable foe if you can't get around them, especially ones as good as the Imladris sentries. So, in spite of the fact that the defenders are technically winning by proportion, I don't think it's the be-all and end-all in this fight at all. Missiles spewing forth. Again, they're not going to do all that much damage against a unit that is this bulky though. Umbar very much at home in this kind of warfare. What do the defenders have left in terms of actual quality? They've got pikes, basic pikes. Shield Guard are a reasonably high quality unit, but more defensive perhaps. I mean, there's not a huge amount. There's still some Sapphire Bladesmen. A fresh unit of Sapphire Bladesmen, in fact. That's pretty significant. But in terms of the quality, yeah, you'd say the attackers have got the edge at this point. Difference may be is that the attackers do have to be the ones to seize the initiative and move forward and attack. Whereas oftentimes the smaller army with higher quality gets to sit back and be on the defence. That will not be the case this time, but maybe that is a blessing in disguise.
The battle is very much in our favour. Victory will
The announcer would certainly seem to think so. Dragon's Wrath crossbows in here as well, trying to help shore up the flag rim, but with the Royal Legion of Armanelos and the Black Swan Renegades, this is a fight that the Easterlings will not win. And they are going to send forward more reinforcements to try and hold the bridges, which, that's interesting. And the more they send over there, the more they're going to have to commit. Ardenheim Shield Guard being sent over here with the Royal Guard? No, just Ardenheim Shield Guard. Maybe they can get away with fighting on that bridge down there though, because the force that's up here is less scary. There's still some Imladris elements up here which have to be taken seriously, but with a bit of range support it should be doable. We shall have to wait and see. Balakith Marksman on the way back. A fresh unit of Sapphire Bladesmen is important. More javelins of that quality could be the difference in victory and defeat. Phalanx unit on the front line as well. The Gamprim are turning this fight around. Some dwarves enter into the fray as well though, fighting one another to a bit of a standstill as it stands. These crossbows would appear to still have a bit of ammunition, which could be really, really important, but they're also attracting the attention immediately of some archers on both sides of the bridges. Armour upgrade will help them a little bit, but the runic crossbows are really not the best when they're put under that kind of scrutiny. Another unit of crossbows there, which have a bit of ammo. Nara and Aru Royal Guard still have ammunition, a little bit more defensive in nature, but still continuing to trade blows with the Gondorian archers, which Gondor will actually accept that at this point, I think, as long as these missiles that the defenders still have are hitting units which are, to be honest, more inconsequential than the infantry that they still have at their disposal. Imladris moving in once again, taking it upon himself to be the more aggressive party over here, with Eldarenway Spearmen and Broinen River Wards together could be enough to finish off the Balakith Marksmen and the Ardenheim Shield Guard. Crossbows continuing to do their thing. Surely at some point Dol Amroth will just throw everything in. I have faith. Not much, but a little. That we will see Dol Amroth come alive. And finally, because because I don't really count earlier on. Like earlier on there was so little opposition that by the time he committed himself it was like 0 risks. You often see newer players be this way inclined though. Less risks. But also less rewards as a result. And Umbar's still winning over here, Imladris struggling a bit more, and once again it comes down to the Gondorian player. Like Gondor need to push forward with a bit of their units, and there's still Dol Amroth forces up here as well. Imladris needs the support. They've taken it upon themselves to push in and engage with a pretty solid Umbar force on this bridge, and you're content to sit there and let them die because you don't want to go into battle. The game is total war. At some point in time you do need to bloody your weapons. Infantry does need to be committed. Trebuchet comes back. Rotting meat committed. That will lower the morale of units around here, but all it succeeds in doing in the end is breaking the very small amount of Black Swan Renegades that are over here. Yeah, I was going to say this, like this force over here you can send more in, overwhelm it, and systematically destroy it. This force over here is reliant on Dol Amroth pushing forward as well, and at this point in proceedings both Dol Amroth and Gondor have shown themselves to not want to commit their units to these sorts of fights, so as the defenders I think you can afford to take this kind of risk, and you might need to as well, because if you just sit here and be static, the quality of the enemy may overrun you eventually. So you need to take away their support, and going after stuff like these exposed Gondor archers with very heavy Black Numenorian spears is a good way to start going about that. Balagai pikemen can be committed as well, so some defending pikes. I think they do need to save some of their crossbow ammunition for the likes of the Imladris sentries that are still over here. Possibly Havengard as well, if we are ever fortunate enough to see a unit such as that. And still they wait. Godhelm is still alive. Do they still have ammunition, I wonder? Got their bows out still. Could be significant. Ardenheim Shield Guard continuing to do their thing. The elves, of course, will go down swinging, but go down they will. Black Numenorian units, after all, are not the biggest pushovers themselves. And Elder Enway Spearmen are still subject to the Spear Malice, as high as their stats may be. So that armour from the Numenorians will also make them able to weather that storm better than most. And you can see here, like, this would be the moment for the attacks as well. You can see more and more of a focus is being put on pushing up this way. Attack across the bridge. You can overwhelm the defenders and break the back of this battle right now. There's still units over here, but none of them really are all that scary. The Sapphire Bladesmen perhaps a little bit more so, but in terms of sheer melee might, you have what it takes. The more you leave this fight over here, however, to get overwhelmed, the more you're going to be facing off against a unified defending army, and that's a little bit less clear. You could still go on to win, but it's less obvious. The advantage the defenders had is being cut down, however. Slowly but surely. And honestly, most of the talking points in this battle have come from the attackers more so than anything else. The defenders have just been going about their business. I mean, they've been functional, the defenders, but one thing I would say is perhaps they haven't been as efficient as they needed to be. Losing the Lurtz hunting back in the ballista when it still has ammunition is a significant error. And in a 5v3 as the defenders, again with this, again Dol Amroth commits forward a unit of skirmishers that are out of ammunition, being as non-committal as possible. Started to grind my gears in this battle at this point, as I'm sure you can hear from the tone of, or just the way I'm saying things at this point. Like, you have to be nice to newer players, but I have seen Pedro a few times at this point, and every time it's been this kind of thing. I can't imagine people in the group chat in the game were facilitating this kind of approach. Like, for me, I'd be saying, get your ass into melee right now and we can finish this. This isn't campaign where you have to worry about units being still around after the fact. And so many newer players seem to treat it as it is. As if it is. Urukai crossbows will fire in. they're going after the Wanderers of Nimrodel, who, yeah, I think the attackers will go on to win this just because of the quality they still have available to them. So much of what the defenders have left is either very basic or skirmishers that are out of ammo. That's not going to be enough to deal with the kind of units that they still have to fight, should they ever get committed. But we shall see. There's not that much left in this. I mean, God Hellion getting into position. The most conventionally effective of the attackers was certainly, I would say, Imladris. Numenor deserves a mention as well, because they were more of the shield in that early game dynamic that they had going on. But Imladris has also had more to do with the late game flow of the game. So some steel bows there. What the dwarves did was odd, but interesting, and that's always good. But if the attackers do go on to win this battle, as I would suspect, I do not want the Gondorian and Dol Amroth player going away from this battle thinking that they played a blinder and that they did the correct thing, because I can tell you they didn't. Royal Legion of Armenelo struggling a little bit on this front line, needed a little bit more support. Tarnostian spears moving in. More than anything, it's that unit of Elven pikes they still have remaining at this stage. Oof. Nimrodel Rangers doing their thing. Still some Corsair crossbowmen in the backfield. Drawing in rewards. I mean, look at this. There's one unit of Gamprim left. Still, the Gondorian... Well, the Gondorian player actually is sending his Wardens of the White Tower forward now, at least. Those Parathil champions, though. It would be at this point in the battle where, like, I know we're winning, but I would be going ballistic in the group chat, saying, look, can you please commit your infantry units? What are you waiting for? It's such a bizarre thing. But it does look as though they are going to go on to win the fight. Silverthorn Harrows raining down from on high. Uruk-hai Crossmen trying to go after the Wanderers of Nimrodel, who have taken quite a lot of damage, to be fair, but there's only so many targets they can go after, with Numenorian steel bows also doing their thing. Firing in, going after important targets as they are. I mean, the defenders are not completely exempt from this. They have been cowering back here as well, but they didn't have a choice earlier on, but at this point they just need to throw everything in and hope for the best, I would say. Because if they just continue to sit as they are, like, they're going to lose. Like, their units are serving no purpose, sitting in the TC as they are. We're seeing Parathil champions move forward. It's a miracle. Incredible scenes. As a Dol Amroth infantry unit that costs more than 600 florins does indeed get into melee. And yeah, at this point the momentum the attackers have is too great. Interesting fight, this. Strange plays, good plays, frustrating plays. Pretty much everything you would want, and it worked out differently to every Greyhaven siege we've seen in the past. There goes the Easterling General. And once again we are going to see the forces of good defeat an evil defence, as has been the theme of late. Pretty much all of them have gone this way. This time Filler gets to be on the victorious side, as he was playing as the defeated Mordor on Kirith and Gol in the last battle on replay. Of course their crossbows are going to try and do their best, but they are depleted themselves. You would question how much ammunition they still have left, and at this point the momentum is very much with the attackers. Thrandir's retinue pushing through that front line, smashed to smithereens. I mean, it is going to be within 10% most certainly of a close battle which could have gone either way. So many weird things. I think the most bizarre thing though was the Dwarven fate in the earlier game, pushing through to the TC as a result of the Iron Watch detonating themselves while they were in that siege tower, something that I'm sure MSQ2 will never do again. You live and learn. Crossbows in play. Parathil champions are here. There goes the Umbar general, skewered by spears and pikes. Balagai pikemen broken and fighting to the death. Crossbows are back here. Royal Legion of Armenelos in the spearhead, and the Sapphire Bladesman getting ripped limb from limb. It's going to be the end of Umbar. that is also going to be the end of the battle as a whole. Steel bows in melee. And where are those Haven Guard? Yep, Haven Guard. The Gwaith Arthand also, to be fair, completely clean, without a mark on them. The rest of Imladris' units more than make up for that. The Haven Guard clearly not wanting to dirty their armour and weapons. And there we go. Uruk-hai crossmen in the town centre, so they do have a lot of morale, but of course they don't really stand a chance really in melee. And that is going to be that as we watch from the balcony. There's some Castamir's Rangers there who actually are broken and fighting to the death because they're outside of the marked flagged area. Thrandir's retinue pushing in again. So this is pretty much the sum total of what they have left. Unsurprisingly, an overwhelming majority of it is Dol Amrothian. Not a huge amount, to be fair. I mean, I have been maybe a little harsh on Dol Amroth, but the principle does still stand. When you win a fight like this, it can cement in your mind that, yeah, I did the right thing. No. Very much no. This could have been more comprehensive. Gondor at least had the excuse that they got savaged by the Umbar crossbows and rangers early on, and couldn't really make a dent in the initial Umbar force at the gates. That is not an excuse that Dol Amroth can roll with. But such is the way of things. Are there any dwarves still left in this attacking force? Yes, there is. So all of the attacking armies do have at least something left to enjoy the spoils of victory with. Can't ask for much more than that. And another very satisfying battle on the Grey Havens, I would suggest. A wintry day. Albeit by the time this comes out, it should be getting into the heart of spring in the UK.
Only by a sword's edge.
Fair to say. And there we go. Still at my original location as well, so this may very well end up being the last replay that I record here, depending on if I get any ones that I want to do before I end up leaving. But yeah, it should be out halfway through April, as I'm sure you will all be very much aware as you watch this. Yeah, Gondor struggled significantly, you would have to say, because of the defence that was laid on for them. I mean, to be fair, the dwarves actually did do quite a lot of damage as they pushed on through against Rhun there. Rhun a little bit slow on the uptake to stop the dwarves from doing that, which may have had a hand in the outcome of the battle, as I think did the ammunition use by the defenders. I think that would be the main thing I would suggest was a factor. They dumped a lot of it early on. They lost some very key units that still had ammunition. Stuff like that makes a big difference in a 5v3. And it can often be a difference that the defenders cannot work their way back from. I've said enough about Gondor and Dol Amroth, I think, in the way that they approach this battle. Very understandable what I think of that based on this battle replay. Just as long as there's like progression away from that mindset, it's not such a problem. But yeah, big thank you to Phila for sending this. And speaking of which, let's see what did the damage for him. His Royal Legion of Armenelos was a big factor in the late game push, and they did very well, as did his Rangers at shooting through that blob, which, to be fair, the defenders, again, they just cowered in the back of the TC, and they were punished for that. Enemy skirmishers were still able to hit them, and as a result, again, passive plays on both sides, which didn't help matters, but the defenders are always going to be held to higher standards in this kind of battle than the attackers. Other than that, though, pretty average performances, but again, he was the one that took quite a lot of the hits in the early stages. Not to say Imladris didn't at all, but Numenor perhaps more so, because Imladris had a little bit more to help take the town centre later on. But yes, could be my last recording here, which is something to think about. Yeah, big thank you to Phila for sending this one in, and big thank you to all the rest of the players for being a part of this battle as well. As I said, updates and all that will have, I'm sure, kept people abreast of the situation that's going on with me at the moment, and the schedule that has been happening for over a month at the point of where this battle comes out should be very well settled in by this point. So this is coming to the end really of my insurance policy for the channel, where I record very far in advance to make sure that you know, all of the movement stuff doesn't affect the channel in terms of a big gap where I don't upload anything. That should hopefully be the case, and hopefully I have managed to execute on that sufficiently well. Regardless of that, maybe another recording before I leave this place. Kind of depends, there's still a week left before I do, so that's plenty of time for someone to send in a replay that I do feel the burning need to get done quickly. And, you know, that's really that. Keep an eye out for updates that will be happening after this as well, because I'm sure there will be continuous updates given the nature of the situation being what it is. But yeah, it's things will continue as they have, or at least that is the great hope. Without having actually experienced what my new timetable will be yet, I'm not sure, but I'm sure that it's doable based on what I know. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.